You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another edition of the Assembly Call Radio, where we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is some episode over 1,000 for us. I don't have the updated run sheet. We are winging it today, but it is recorded on the evening of May 7th, Wednesday instead of Thursday. That's when we could get people together. We're excited to talk a little bit of basketball with you. I am your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Hey, this week's banner moment is simply we have something to talk about. We have a basketball team. We know what teams we're playing, although I need to look that up or have Coach Moats look that up or something to share with you who we play twice. I know we play Purdue twice. Home and away schedule came out. We have our coaching staff. We have a brand new coach added. We'll try to get you that information as well. But it is a different time for Indiana basketball, and there are a wide variety of reactions and feelings right now. Some people are excited and optimistic. Some people are a little bit reserved. Had some good conversations with people at some of the baseball games. There is some reservation, and rightfully so, after a long period of time of Indiana being up and down in the basketball world with good recruiting and then bad results and vice versa. But the banner moment is when you do make a coaching change, you have a fresh start. And regardless of where you are on that continuum of skeptical or reserved, cautious to overly excited about the new change, it is a new change. And that is exciting. And we're here to give our opinions about those things, answer some really good questions that we gotten. And with me is a good group of guys, right? You are guys, coaches, shot doctors, and everything. So let me introduce these guys. We have Ryan Phillips. I'm not going to play your song, Ryan. I'm just going to go right to you tonight.
Just go right to me.
What is your rant tonight, or what are you thinking? It's been a while since we talked.
I think that I feel good about where things are at. Adding Rod Clark was a really good addition. Everybody I've talked to about him as an assistant coach is really high on him. He was, assistant for Tennessee in back-to-back Elite 8 appearances. He's been, key to their recruiting efforts there. And I think that, that's a solid addition. To add to this, it looks like there are a handful of really good recruiters on the staff now. It's going to be a bigger staff where, the guys who are more basketball focused can just concentrate on that. And then there's the recruiting guys who can do the basketball stuff and, put their effort into recruiting. I like how that's set up. And as far as the roster goes, I think it tells you, Coach DeVries may not have gotten all of the guys he wanted in the portal, but the makeup of the roster tells you a lot about what he wants to do. And if you look at just the size of the roster, there's going to be movement. You're not going to run guys out there that are, 6'8", 6'7", whatever. I know Reed Bailey's 6'11", but he plays more of a face-up game. You're not going to run guys out there at that size to play back to the basketball. And so it's going to be a dramatic change. We wonder about how it's going to work on defense, but his defense, the West Virginia's defense was really good last year. They'll figure it out. But it tells me that this is going to be an offense that's focused on movement. It's focused on everybody interchanging positions, going out on the perimeter, whatever. And then you find your size mismatches where you find them. And it won't necessarily be at the center or, the forward position. So I think that it's definitely going to be a different brand of basketball. And quite frankly, that's what we've all been asking for several years now. So that's a positive. We'll see how this plays out. It looks like they're done roster wise. From everything you hear, they are done. except for waiting on Luke Goody and potentially Anthony Leal asking for another year. So we'll see, how that works out. But it definitely is indicative of the kind of basketball he wants to play, the guys he brought in.
Also with us is Coach Moats, who I had I don't know if we've talked since we were together at Hinkle for your first trip to Hinkle Fieldhouse for the NIT Finals. We had a good time. We kind of drove some people away from our seats with our X and O talk about that final. But Coach Moats knows a lot about basketball, host of X's and Joe's, going to put out a new show here coming up this week, correct? It's Coach Moats. Share with us your thoughts here as May starts, the offseason kind of really kicking in now that school is going to be over, and we'll start hearing about some more things about summer travel and all of those things. How are you feeling about Indiana basketball?
I think excited is a good word to use at this point, and I think it's a cautious excitement. It's definitely one where it's like, but we at least have not just a roster in place, but a roster, as Ryan was saying, is going to show more movement. It's going to definitely demonstrate more what we call modern basketball, more attacking, because you're going to be looking at a program that is going to be more face-up oriented versus post-up oriented. I mean, DeVries last year was in the 34th percentile the number of times he put it into the post. That was at West Virginia. He really wasn't known to do that much at Drake either. So he's going to be more in the median to below the median as to the number of times you're looking at things like post touches. I think what's really been remarkable for me has been the sort of no nonsense, no drama approach that we're seeing from the staff. It doesn't have that same tenor that we've had really, I would even say, for the last 20 years, where the amount of not excitement, but just the amount of almost like a kid, an 8-year-old on Christmas, right before Christmas coming up, where we're all just buzzing every time there's an offer, or buzzing during visits. It's almost like what's happening here is they get a kid to campus on this portal, and they lock them down, and you can just tell. Like we were talking the last show that I was on, we were talking about the Wilkerson commitment, and we were pretty sure he was sitting right next to the kid as he was doing his interview with Goodman. So I think that there's something about this that's a very the business-like approach of the staff, which I think is very similar to what we see with Kurt Signetti in the football program, where we're just we have a job to do. We're going to find out when we find out. And the big thing is that just not that sort of roller coaster on every single recruitment or every single situation around the program. And it'll be good to kind of see this program kind of take that step where we're actually we have a lot of confidence and competence with the competence of the group, and just know that when we'll be following it obviously, but just not with the same sort of emotional roller coasters and vortices that we've been dealing with for the last seems like forever.
Yeah,
Ryan, you had something to add.
Yeah, one thing that Bob touched on is just sort of no drama. You're not hearing leaks either. Mm-hmm. It seems like this is just kind of it's very workmanlike instead of flashy. And I feel like the last couple years with Mike Woodson, you've had these flashy pickups that were a big deal, but then it would get quiet and you'd have to wait to see them play in when the season started and all that. And that's the way you have to do here, but you're not seeing these elevated expectations from fans. I think that's been years of being beaten down that they're feeling that way. But at the same time, I do think that this staff is just going about its job. They're not trying to be flashy. They're not trying to grab headlines. They are just putting together a basketball team they think they can put on the floor and win with. And that's a positive. It's a nice change because, look, I think after years of overhyped garbage, I think that it's now let's just get a team that could win. Let's calm down. Don't try and get me hyped. Just give me something to cheer for when it's actually time to cheer for it.
And with all that, we'll try to break down all this this evening here in our three segments. But a reminder that our show, as is every show, is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere. And they don't just have IU stuff; they have all kinds of stuff. I have my LSU sweatshirt on tonight. Moats has his own line that's coming out at Home Field where it has his likeness, name, image, and likeness. You really don't want to buy that at Home Field. But they're always expanding and trying something new, including launching new schools, all kinds of promotional boxes and everything. You've heard us talk about it over and over and over again, but we just love the people at Home Field. Get the new stuff quick. The new baseball jersey is just fire. I got that. I have the Lee Corso, been wearing that a while. So I've kind of dabbled back into Home Field, much to Mrs. Tonsoni's chagrin there. She don't like that, but, she makes all the money. I spend it, and I choose to spend it at Home Field. If you would like to spend some of your wife's money or your own hard-earned money, go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, to spend your money at Home Field, go to homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, some headlines that have happened, and guys, you can take this anywhere you want. We are going to talk specifically about the roster. I'd like to dabble in some of the conference plays and the non-conference games that we know and just get your feelings. It's early in that process. Where you think about that. We have waiting on some appeals and some waivers situation with Anthony Leal information. Haven't heard directly from him, but there is news out there that he is trying to get a waiver. We can talk about that. A lot of things are happening even in this time now at this lull. So, Ryan, going back to you, let's go over the confirmed players as of right now, and I got to really practice up on the names, so I apologize with the names. But according to Inside the Hall, Tayton Connerway, Enright, Lamar Wilkerson, and Jason Drake are your guards. Wings and forward, Tucker DeVries. He's got last names here, Miles and Nick Dorn and Trent Sisley, and then the bigs, Reed Bailey, Sam Alexis, and the freshman, or the new guy, Harris.
Yeah, Josh Harris.
So 11 guys.
And Trent Sisley will be in there too.
And Trent Sisley. And the big question, we see it in the chat and things, is rim protection. And I'll start that. Yes, you would love to have that big guy back there who blocks shots and rebounds, but you can still defend without that ideal guy. And the way that you counter that, if you do not have that ideal person and couldn't get them in, is to have heavy ball pressure. And the 2 point guards in Connery and Enright have been known to be extremely impressive in their just annoyance factor for people who bring up the ball. And you also see, when you dive into the stats, some steal percentages. I know everyone hates the word deflections and those things, but you put a lot of pressure on the ball on passing lanes and make it tough to get inside is a way maybe to compensate if you don't have that traditional big, which Indiana has had. Coach Moats, your thoughts just in general. You could go any way you want. You can talk guards, wings, forwards, the lack of a big. What do you like? What are your concerns from what we know so far without seeing these guys play yet?
You do have a big in Reed Bailey, and I mean, he's 6'11". He can definitely alter. And that's the other thing when you think about rim protection. It's not just about getting blocks. It's about can you disrupt rhythm and flow of a shooter or somebody who's on the drive. Such a guy playing.
He's a little thin though, isn't he?
A little.
He's
thin.
more like a four.
He may
not
like
a true stretch four, but a.
He's not, he's not a bulky sort of guy, but that comes with advantages on the offensive end too, obviously. And there's that. There's also coming with the advantage of potentially being able to handle, handling ball handlers in ball screen coverage and even in handoff coverage. So, there's a lot that he offers there. The other thing is he's a great passing five. His time. He had a 25% assist rate, and that's something that when you get that out of a guy at the top of a 5-out system, that can make a huge difference in as to how teams defend you. Going back to the defensive end, Sam Alexis, I think is who's gonna. I have a feeling they're gonna platoon those two guys quite a bit.
And I think Alexis is more of a center in the classic sense than Bailey is.
At 6'9", right?
A little smaller, yeah.
And he's 240.
6'9".
He has a good block shot rate too. For being smaller.
And especially, again, he did a lot of that at Chattanooga. And Coach Tonsoni, we know how great Chattanooga is as a program. He played on that team.
Yeah, we saw it live.
We saw it live, and so we know we know those guys can play and are definitely a scrappy group. I do think that when you look with a kid like Alexis, when you look at that can offer you some of that protection underneath. But as Coach mentioned, a lot of it with DeVries is his pressure on the passing lanes and disrupting offensive flow is going to be critical, because sometimes it's about not just stopping the ball when it gets in the lane. It's preventing it from getting there in the first place. And I think the way that they're configured, and if they're going to play them the way I think they are, where you're going to play basically a DeVries at the 4 versus, Alexis and Bailey together, I have a sneaking suspicion that, they're going to be able to, at the very least, keep the ball kind of maybe confined to a side, keep the ball out of the lane on dribble penetration, be mobile enough where they're not getting beat in that drop coverage or that ball screen coverage. And I'll guarantee you, I think that this team's going to be skilled enough not to get lost on their defensive assignments. I think that's going to be a priority going in.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Connerway, and you're talking about ball pressure, Coach. He led where'd he go? Troy, sorry. He led Troy in points per game, assists per game, and steals per game, and is primarily he's a defensive player. I mean, that's his calling card. But he was a Sun Belt Player of the Year, and he's primarily a defensive player. So he could score, he can do some things for you, but he's going to be the point of attack guy guarding the opposing point guard. I think there's no question to me about that. So I think it's clear they're leaning into that and not guards who can score only and rim protection, underneath the hoop with a big center. Again, maybe he would have preferred it the other way around and the targets just weren't there. This is what they went after, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like he wants more of a mobile offense, and through that mobile offense, you get guys who can move on defense as well.
Well, he didn't have a real big guy at West Virginia, did he? No. And part of it is, I think too, is that we've seen bigs lately, in the last 4 or 5 years, and that gets in the mindset that we need to have that. And I also think when you start new and you got to get roster that's 10, 11 new guys, you've got to prioritize what you want. And Ryan, I think you're absolutely correct there. You're prioritizing the ability to move and do some things on offense, and then get the guys with some length, some ball pressure ability, some other ways of defending, and then you find a way to defend without giving up offense. I just think it's different. And one of the things I will encourage all of us fans to do is it's going to be different, and we need to be patient, and we need to see it to really fully understand this roster construction. My excitement level is it's got to be better. As someone who was not very fond of the last regime, we had Division I experience come in. We had high recruits come in. We had fives, come in, and we didn't make the tournament in the last 2 years. So my level of excitement is that it's a little bit different. Bob, send it back to you. Who else catches your attention from what you know at this point?
I do think, again, I love the fact you have Lamar, Wilkerson, and Tucker DeVries on the floor potentially at the same time.
Those are going to be your leading scorers, right? We can just assume from now that those are going to be your leading scorers.
I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on Big Ten defenses. I'll put it that way. I think that they're going to, because they're 3-level guys, it's going to be hard for them to contain. Both of them were used pretty heavily in their, in their systems also as balls, in receiving ball screens. So it's, you have multiple guys who can receive ball screens. It's not going to just be where you're going to just see Connerway get a ball screen and then look to just hit a level 2, hit a cutting big going down the middle. We're going to see a lot more reads off the bounce, where you're going to start seeing a guy like Connerway or Enright, or I think it's trying to think. I got to check notes again on this because another guard that we have at this point.
Jason Drake is
Jason Drake is the one. Yeah, he's a 3-point shooter, can kind of get downhill. But even guys like Nick Dorn were taking ball screens, where they were at to a varying degree. So you have multiple guys that can attack in 2-man game, where you can kind of get those defenses in those cover twos, where one guy's covering 2 guys on the perimeter, and both guys, you're seeing a prioritization in shooting. where you're going to have guys who can actually just get a good catch, get a good shot, and you have a team full of guys who are passers. I mean, just with the assist rates, if you look at this on a Ken Pom or a Torvik, we look at these guys' assist rates. It's pretty impressive that you have multiple, not just shot makers but also playmakers. The biggest concern I think that I have, though, if I'm looking at a concern, it's going to be probably finishing at the rim.
Yeah,
it's probably the biggest problem that we're going to probably notice early on is just when they get to the rim, are they going to be able to finish as effectively as top 2% teams or even some of the teams in the top 5%? Is it a good trade-off? It is because I think that because I also think if they get fouled, they can also make, get the free throw line, they're going to be able to generate offense, but I think there's going to be some times of frustration, or at the very least, just times we're like, yeah, I mean, maybe that's going to be a concern that could maybe cost us a couple times this year.
I think that's valid. I think scoring at the rim is going to look different than everything's going to look different. Instead of driving or getting that Chicago action where you're driving to the hoop and trying to score off the drive, it's going to be there's going to be some of that, but there's also going to be, if you've watched any of the tape, where people are running out at shooters, and the playing two is going to be different than playing two in the post. It's going to be a lot of passing and hitting the dunker spot and hitting some of those types of things. That's just going to be different than the driving, the point guard heavy, get to the rim style. But I do see that's a concern. I have a concern, but we're going to go to Ryan's concern first with the roster.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of Power 5 experience is the thing that I see. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that. These guys have shown they can play at the college level. It's just, is there that adjustment? You see a guy who shoots 39% from three in a smaller level. How does that translate to the Big Ten? How does, somebody who got a certain amount of block shots or rebounds or whatever in a smaller conference, how does that translate to the Big Ten? And you've got, Connor, we went to Troy, Enright, DePaul, which is a major conference, but then you got Wilkerson, Miles, Drake, Dorn, Bailey, Josh Harris, and then you got a freshman in Trent Sisley. So these guys haven't played at the P5 level. And so how does that translate? And that might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. You don't know. But I will say also the interesting part of this, there's a lot of one-year guys. So so maybe you counter the lack of P5 experience with an overabundance of actual on-court college experience. So I think that's where it gets interesting, is how does this translate? These guys are veterans who played years of college basketball. Does that make up for not playing in a bigger atmosphere and in a bigger conference? So it's fascinating. And I don't necessarily, I would rather have, at this point in a first year, I would rather have experience than no playing time in a big conference. I'd rather have a lot of playing time at the college level. And these guys, obviously, in those smaller schools, have probably played on the road in bigger environments as well. So it'll just be interesting. I mean, it's all kind of an experiment at this point, and we don't know what it's going to look like.
I think go
ahead, Coach.
I think the concern is the number of people that don't have Power 5 together. Like you see Dalton connect, you see Brome play at Murray State and then become the player of the year there. You have seen examples of players that played at the low level that really got into a good situation. Now, were they surrounded with other talent that helped them offset or bring up their capabilities? When you have 9 or 10 of the guys with non-power, do they fit in? The other thing I would say is that these guys are being recruited by Kentucky and other places like they're wanted. There's a high probability that the experience level that you talk about overrides where they played. I think you've seen a shift in college basketball to experience mattering more over youth and talent. The experience with a little bit less talent has played really well. You see the guy at Florida, the guard Clayton or whatever else at Iona for 2 years, right? So that's the hope. You got to hope that these enough guys elevate their game to some level of that in order to be successful.
Look at the Final Four the last few years. There are experienced teams all over it. The Elite Eight the last couple of years, experienced teams all over it. And it's great to have talent. Like, don't get me wrong. I want all the talent to come to Indiana, but you need to have those guys who have experience, who have high basketball IQ, you because they've been through it. They've experienced it. They are solid. They don't get shaken in tough minutes. You saw it with Duke this year. Duke in the Final Four fell apart at the end of their Final Four game because they didn't have anyone with experience who had been there before, who they could give the ball to, who could get downhill, who could get what they needed. They had the most talent in the country and struggled in that late game situation.
Here's the other thing that I'm. Go ahead, Bob.
You hit a great point with who is recruiting these guys, and when you look at who we weren't going up against. We weren't fighting Ben McCollum for players to go to that he was going to go to Iowa. We're going for the guys that the SEC is looking for. So if you want a team that we've been asking for years at Indiana, we want a team that's going to be an SEC type team. We need an SEC style team. I think we get this with this roster. Now, the question I have kind of moving forward, and we're going to start noticing this as going into the next month, where are his recruiting priorities going to be with freshmen, with the class of 2026? And we can start kind of noticing, as he's starting to make those moves, is he going to look to make that, make some talent, I would just say some more athleticism based upgrades with the sorts of players that we're looking at. I think he needs to get a team in now, as Ryan said, very experienced. I mean, you have a lot of 1-year guys, a lot of guys who are going to be in for a season, going to try to, just implement what Darren DeVries wants to do. And then they're going to backfill next year with whatever they haul in with freshmen, also with Sicily coming back. You're going to have that group coming, that group next year with this. But I do think that the biggest thing is, years ago when I was teaching at Arsenal Tech, and this was the Trey Lyles' junior year, they actually told that team, Carmel is going to won the state title, and they didn't have any Division I guys on it. So, or Division I players in the high school. So winning an IHSA championship with no Division I players, Carmel was some of all parts. I think you may see with this group a sum of all parts approach, where you have a bunch of guys who can do things pretty well, or not just a bunch of things decently, but do a couple things on an elite level. And if you get the right system in place, you're going to see a team that's going to be highly competitive. And especially if they can defend and play Darren DeVries type of high turnover defense, you can have the team that's going to be very interesting, not just interesting to watch, but also very competitive and very dangerous.
I mean, he's the other thing that you. Yeah, go ahead,
Coach. Oh, I was
going to say, Ryan, there's a little lag there. Okay, very good. The other thing is, some of these guys will have a chip on their shoulder to prove that they can play it at this level.
Exactly.
And they're going to be maybe more accepting of their roles to come in and say, hey, we can play and we can win. You are concerned about the guys who are high volume. We saw that in Carlisle and Rice last year. High volume guys at their schools, when they came in, they struggled with a lesser role. That is a concern too. How do you mesh that together and get guys to accept that you're not getting – we all looked at how many threes each of these guys have taken. They're not going to get that many opportunities, or we're going to shoot 80% threes next year. So, that is – the chip on the shoulder, again, it's the hope that kills you, and I'm in a very positive place with this roster and this coaching staff. But those are the things that are going to have to work in order for Indiana to be competitive in the Big Ten and get a good spot in the NCAA tournament. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's clear he's building a team, not a collection of talent.
Right.
And I think that's the departure for Indiana this year. Is it is going to be built with a system in mind and with a set of procedures in mind and with a style of play in mind. It's not going to be, let's get all the best players and figure it all out. And talent will figure this out as well. It's going to be constructed with thought of fitting into the system. And then, altering your system here or there to fit the players you have, obviously, but tweaks, not night and day changes. And I think that's what you've got here.
So we're going to call it a first segment here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about expectations. Moose in the chat has a really good comment I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about where you might be on the spectrum of, are you skeptical, are you cautious, are you overly optimistic, and why it's okay to be any of those as we head into 25-26. But all of that will be coming up here next on the Assembly Call, so stick with us. I'm just going to roll right into it. We usually take a break and talk. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We appreciate you being here. We're going to go on and talk some more basketball. So here comes segment 2.
This is Verdell Jones. What's better than an epic buzzer beater, the full court dribble, and perfectly placed pass to set it all up? And, of course, celebrating with Hoosier Nation afterwards. So join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on an Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to Assembly Call Radio. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Coach Moats, here with the shot doctor, the one and only Ryan Phillips. We're talking a little summer basketball or near summer basketball as Indiana faces graduation in Bloomington this weekend. I'm going to go down for 2 baseball games and try to just slip into town and avoid the crowd. Wish I could get to upstairs and have a drink or two, but I'm going to avoid most of everything other than Bart Kaufman on Friday and Saturday night. Yeah,
quite a line to deal with.
So Mrs. Tonson, I have I'm taking some kids to the state capitol, or not taking, I'm meeting them there with their parents for an award ceremony, and then I get to leave at 1:30. She said, well, just drive down and sit in the parking lot. You're used to doing that. So I think I'm going to be in the parking lot at like 2:30 in the afternoon for IU versus Purdue. So if you want to see us beat Purdue, come join us at Bart Kaufman. But we have some really good questions here as Ryan has disappeared. I'm sure he will be back. But I want to go back to these questions here real quick, getting him back on stage, about expectations and where you might be thinking. I've had some really, really good conversations with people that are on the whole level of spectrum. And Indiana basketball has been a tough follow as a fan for quite a few years. And so there are quite many ways to be going into this season. But I want to start with 2 things. And our friend Hooperazzi said this, and we'll hold on, and I'll ask you this question. So this is a team that finishes 6th in the Big Ten but goes to an Elite 8. So we're going to talk about expectations in a tough and well-coached Big Ten, as opposed to like Louisville, had a really quick turnaround, but they had the benefit of a poor ACC. I'm not sure Coach DeVries has that much luxury. So, yes, it could be, but we'll come back to that. And then Trent, our friend Moose, also had a great comment too. I have no expectations for this team, and it's the most liberating feeling I've had about IU basketball in 8 years, to be honest. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. What kind of team are we going to have? What are the expectations for wins and tournament placement and all of those things? Guys, you can answer that. And then how do we handle our expectations? And why is it okay for some of our solid Assembly Call followers to be a little on the fence and skeptical? And also, why is it okay to be thoroughly excited? Ryan, we'll throw it to you, and you can take it in any direction that you like.
I think that people should be excited for the direction that this program is heading more than what this team will be. I think it's more what this team represents, which is a different brand of basketball. I think most people can agree the last couple of years, the brand of basketball was not fun. It was a slog. It was not enjoyable. And the same can be said for Archie Miller's 4 years as well. This is going to be different. And I think that, is this team next year going to win the national championship? No. But it's this first step on that road, if that's indeed where it ends up, will happen next season. And so the idea is, what does this team look like? How do they perform on the floor? And then you take that and say, okay, where are the holes? Where can we improve it moving forward? So I think that that's where we're at with this team, is just don't have expectations that this is going to be some amazing, unbelievable run. I'm not saying it can't be that, but that shouldn't be your expectation. Your expectation should be this will be a solid team. And hopefully the expectation you do have is they'll get into the tournament safely and compete in a more enjoyable way with the other teams in the Big Ten. Is there a higher ceiling on it? Sure. Could there be a lower floor? Absolutely. But I think that the brand of basketball you're going to see and the way that these guys play is going to be much different than what we've seen in the past. And I think that's where your expectations should be. Analyze the style of basketball, the coaching, and the types of players that are here. And that's what your focus should be. I'm not saying be happy if they finish below 500. I don't think that's going to be close to the case. But just understand that this is the first step on a trajectory. And I'll say also, you'll get to see what this coaching staff can do pretty quickly, I think, not just with the games on the floor, but also with the recruiting.
Bob, expectations as far as competitiveness, placement in the Big Ten, maybe potential NCAA seed, and then that spectrum that we're all debating right here about how do we look at this team, and again, give a little bit of guidance to those that are on both ends of that spectrum where everyone's, you're okay to be there, and we're giving you permission to be on either end.
Yeah. I'm never going to tell a fan how to feel. I honestly, and especially after, and Ryan hinted at this, it's the last 8 seasons, and even going long before that. I think the first thing to be thankful of is that we're not going to see a transition like we did when Tom Crean took over years ago, or when Archie Miller took over, where I don't anticipate us getting run off our own floor by Indiana State. I'll put it that way. I don't see that coming. And I don't think that that's going to be an acceptable I think a lot of this is going to be, look at the culture as it's being built around this program. Looking at things like, one of the big things I will look for would just be what type of shots are they getting, and if they're going down, great. If they're not, are they getting great looks? Are they getting good shots? Are they in position on defense? Is it because teams are just beating them because the player maybe the matchup's a little better, or is it a breakdown? All those little things that we kind of talk about as coaches or as fans who really watch the game, with that sort of that sort of eye. I think it's a matter of, are you seeing good basketball? I think Ryan definitely hit the nail on the head. Look at the style of play, look at how they're playing, look at what they're doing, look at their execution and how they're executing. Again, if you're missing great shot looks, it means your system's working. You're getting the shot looks. It just means your guy's not hitting. But I think that another thing, if we start thinking about, well, where will this team end up? Where will this land? We're going to know something pretty early playing Marquette up in Chicago. On November 9th, that's going to be an interesting litmus test to start and just kind of see where. And I think at that point we have a better idea of what we can kind of call a reasonable versus unreasonable expectations. No, this is not a 1 or 2 seed type roster, but this is definitely a team that can be at that lower end of that top 5% of college basketball that might be looking at that sort of 5 seed sort of season, based on the schedule they have, based on the opponents they have, based on the fact that they're playing they're playing the Big Ten. I do think that there's some reason to think there can at least be an interesting team. And to Huberazzi's point, finish 6th in the Big Ten. You could finish 6th in the Big Ten and end up with the right type of draw and end up with an Elite 8 run. It's very plausible in today's college basketball to see that. And also 6th in the Big Ten. I mean, if you can see a team that, if this team finishes 12-8 in the Big Ten, I'm going to be pretty happy over the fact that they're kind of breaking more into that top level, that top third of the conference, versus staying in that massive pack in the middle like it's a NASCAR race on a super speedway, where you're just stuck in the middle of the pack, and if you dare stick yourself out, you get hung out to dry. You go back from being a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament to a play-in game and a 2-game stretch, and that's, you want to get out of that mess. And if we can find a way to kind of just elevate ourselves above that mess a little bit more, it's going to feel a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think that especially when it comes to, the tournament, just get in, give yourself a chance. And that's something that this program has not consistently done in a long time. And if you get it back to that, making the tournament, getting in that, protected seed range, occasionally, getting, competing in the Big Ten, those things, if you get back to those fundamental things, eventually you're going to make a run. Eventually you're going to get to the Final Four. Eventually you're going to win a championship. You just have to give yourself the opportunity. And I think that, people talk about, NIL and throwing money at players and all that. And the idea being, well, go all in for 1 year. That was what last year was. That's not how you win a national championship. You win a national championship by giving yourself the most chances at to have a shot at it. And that's getting into the tournament. That's getting to the Sweet 16. And then eventually things are going to break right. And you're going to move into that next level and that next category. And so I think that's just where the program needs to go. And is this first year, can they do that? Sure, certainly. There's a lot of veterans here. I mean, you look at Torvik. I think that Torvik has them ranked 11th in the Big Ten or something like that. But there's so many variables with this team. They're going to be very hard to pin down. And I would bet the projections are all over the place for Indiana heading into this year.
And answer this, guys, real quick. So Torvik, and it's great when you look at the Torvik roster cast, don't take, basically says don't pay attention to where we have you right now, which is, I guess, 38th in their setup. But as Ken Pomeroy brings his out, as Torvik gets his more dialed in, as these analytics sites in particular start kind of seeing where IU is, and probably going to be in that 30 to 40 range, would be a good starting place. If they finish above that to me is a winning season. I mean, that may be the best possible result. If you see them on an upwards trajectory versus a downwards trajectory, I mean, it's like the stock market's going to bounce up and down. You don't day trade on this, but if you can kind of look at where how it started, how it ended, and if you could take a team that's on the bubble and get them solidly into, let's say, a 5, 6, or 7, even a 7 seed, and you show improvement over what was predicted for you to do, then I think that tells us something.
I'm back. I don't know for how long. I'm trying to charge one earbud up while the other one's down at 7%. I think the word for me, guys, is opportunity. This is an opportunity for improvement of the program. I'm not sure how much it changes wins and losses. I just think this style and this approach has a better chance of long-term success than what the path we were on in the previous regime. I believe that ideally it would be a Louisville turnaround where you get a 6 or 7 seed, you're competitive in your league, you have a chance maybe to move up into the top echelon of the league, and you compete at a high level. West Virginia was kind of on that path until they had a couple major injuries, so there are a lot of things that you cannot predict. But I think it gives us that opportunity. I think we're right in that spot again where you at the floor, you're fighting for that. Your 6, 7, 8 seed, as Hooperazzi said, or in the Big Ten, and you're maybe fighting for a tournament bid, and that can go any way. And I know you already have to be prepared if we don't make the tournament. Well, why'd we fire Woodson if we got the same level of performance? I just think it's an opportunity to change the direction of Indiana basketball back to a collegiate approach more than a professional approach, and so I don't know that I'm expecting wins. I'm expecting a better competitive and a better style and the chance to improve our standing in basketball. Coach Moats, I know I might have missed some of the things that you said while I was trying to adjust these earbuds, but where do you think the fans that you've talked to, where do you find most of them falling on that end of the spectrum? A little hesitant, wait and see, skeptical, or a little more optimistic? Where do you think the balance lies?
It's cautious optimism. I think everyone knows. Everyone I talk to knows it's going to be different, and they know it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. I think a lot of folks are very excited over the fact that IU got into some transfer portal recruitments and won in the ring with some big boys. Reed Bailey was on Alabama's list. We were toe to toe for Wilkerson with Kentucky. They had him in Lexington at the opening of at the horse track, standing next to a horse, and you're thinking, oh man. How can we, there was the fan mindset of, well, how are we going to compete with that? And then the next day, DeVries is sitting next to him in his house, and the guy's saying, I'm coming to Indiana to bring Indiana back on the map. So you're seeing some good early signs that are good to enjoy. it's better to be surging in that versus the other part of this, which is, feeling like, we may not be getting what we want or what the coaching staff wants at this point in time. I just add another fact on this one. This was and Ryan hit on this with Clark coming in from Tennessee. And I'm going to parrot my good friend and podcast partner, Mike Weemuth here. I'm going to steal one of his great ones, which is look at the geography of the concentrated areas of influence of your assistant coaches. Clark is a Southern guy. So we're going south of the Mason-Dixon town. We're talking Florida. We're talking Georgia. We're talking the Carolinas. We're talking that, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, those areas, even going into Texas. Even look at, and then you look at, bringing in Kenny Johnson back to Bloomington, who in the DMV, in that sort of Baltimore, D.C. area, Virginia area. Drew Adams, who's going to help us, really going to help DeVries in the state of Indiana because of his contacts. And then, then you have other guys that are kind of in there, kind of filling in gaps. And you look at the geography of where they got the players, for this team. A lot of them are coming south of that Mason-Dixon line, which is where a lot of really good basketball players are coming, and where IU really hasn't had much of what you would call a presence from recruiting for quite a while. So I would just kind of throw that out too as we start watching these guys on the recruiting trail. They're going to hit Indiana. Obviously, they're going to get the kids in Indiana that they feel will be good for Indiana basketball. But I do think that there's going to be a definite shift as to who they're bringing in, and where they're coming from in the country and the style of basketball they play.
Let me throw this out because it's something that I debate an awful lot. Like when you talk about where they're going to be in the Big Ten or expectations in this program or this program, we don't know a lot about Indiana, and we also don't know a lot about these other teams. You have some new coaches, Minnesota and Iowa, and I'm not diving into their rosters as much. And I don't know that in this era of the transfer portal and at minimum 3, 4, 5 guys going to a new team, or a lot of teams, whether they have a new coach and retooling a whole entire roster, but you have veteran coaches that are retooling and getting 9 or 10 recruits each year in one-man rosters. We don't know a lot. I think – so my question is, are – the preseason way too early bracketology, the preseason top 25, all of that has traditionally been on who's coming back, who has a veteran presence, what have they done in the past, what are their recruiting, and I don't know that they were ever super accurate. They gave you a snapshot, but is it easier or more difficult now with this transfer portal in really understanding a pecking order inside the Big Ten and even in a top 25, top 30 nationally? Ryan, your thoughts on how we all want to talk about it. We all want to know. We all want people to share where they think Indiana is going to be, but I've seen them top 5 recruiting portal here, and then I see someone like we'll have Indiana. Torvik has Indiana 11th or 12th in their rankings. Is it easier, difficult, or just the same dilemma of how to judge these teams in the offseason?
I think it's much harder to judge when teams get players as Indiana has from lower divisions to come up. You're not getting guys who you have seen on the floor in the Big Ten or the SEC. You're getting guys from a lower level. And let's be real, guys from the Big Ten and the SEC, if they're successful, they don't transfer. For the guys who are on the bench transfer. So, but it's harder to project who's gonna be the guy. I mean, look at Dalton Connect's a perfect example. He was great, and then
testing.
Yeah, we can hear you, Jared.
Oh shoot, you can.
Yeah. Disembodied voice, Jared Morris on the other end.
Hey, Jared, while you're back in the background, something happened with the layout. If you can figure out how to fix the layout, because I tried to put you in.
Shrunk a little.
Yeah, we got shrunk up at one point. And I didn't want to blow up anything that we were doing. So if you can figure that out and put yourself in the video.
With Tom Sony and me on the show, being shrunk isn't a bad thing.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, Eddie's got his new layout here. See, we need Eddie here.
Also, irony of all ironies, Jared interrupted me for once. That was
it's really what should happen more often.
I know, really should. I mean, I'm even agreeing with that.
You sound good, But
Yeah,
welcome to the show, everyone. Jared Morris
Thank
is
you.
now joining us to talk a little bit of Indiana basketball. And
Happy to be here.
Jared, while you're
proud new puppy owner, Jared Morris.
Yeah.
New puppy owner. Yes. I mean, look, why not? If you're in like the busiest time of your life with your wife's job going crazy, you taking a new job, 2 kids, one who's 4, one who's 8, why not add a puppy to the mix?
I can't see a problem there. Also, it's now the Jared Morris show. If you look at the
Yes.
video,
That's just me.
I don't know. I don't know what we did here, but
Here we go. Okay, now we got Ryan.
now this is
right.
this is the
Good night,
version.
everybody.
This is the version that we need right here. This whatever buttons I just hit, this was magical. For those of you listening to the podcast, we've just eliminated Ryan's face from the video portion.
I'm just going to chime in at inappropriate moments, like right now.
Figure out our thing. But Jared, while we're trying to figure all this out, we're talking about expectations and why it's okay for our fans to be skeptical and hesitant, and it's also okay to be enthusiastic. And we encourage people to feel what they're feeling about this program. And we've said I've said the word opportunity, a change in style, different than the past. Those are all things that have been said. Where do you sit? And we always don't tell fans how to fan, but I know there's a wide variety in the people that I've talked to of what they're feeling. How do you
Some
feel?
of us probably do that. Some of us probably do that more than others, even if we shouldn't. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself from the last couple shows, because I've said a couple times, like, I think at a minimum, this is interesting. It's something new, it's something different, so it's worth being interested in, whether you feel particularly confident or not. I would say, I know this layout is all messed up. But at least I got you on here. You should be happy. Your face is on here.
I was enjoying the
like
other way.
I think it's fair. Like I read, Eamon Brennan's piece, which I don't think was negative against Darren DeVries, but I think just asked some questions about, what a roster filled with basically mid-major all-stars is going to do up at this level. We've seen some of that in the Discord conversation. I think that's perfectly valid. Like there are real questions here, but those questions only matter in terms of the context in which they're being asked. And personally, like I'm not asking for Darren DeVries to come in and create a national championship contender in year 1. I want us to play competent, more consistent, competitive basketball, get back to the NCAA tournament, and just, be a program that we all enjoy watching and are proud to watch again. And I think the players that he's getting and the way that it seems like they're going to fit together, I think we'll have that. Now, are we going to finish 5th in the Big Ten or 9th in the Big Ten or 2nd in the Big Ten? I don't know. I think there's, a fairly wide variance of, kind of how this could go. I think this group has some upside because of the talent and the shooting, but maybe they don't quite, or because of the abilities in the shooting and how things fit together. Maybe they don't have the high-end talent that you would particularly want to see. But, again, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be different. It's a paradigm shift in terms of how we're playing. So whether it's positive or negative, like it's interesting and everything else. And really that's all that matters, because we're all just pontificating and guessing about what a brand new group of guys is going to do coming together, which is honestly kind of a waste of our breath. But what we can actually say is this is new, this is interesting, this is kind of fun, and I'm intrigued to see like what it's all going to look like. And I just don't, beyond that, like I don't really know how you can criticize anybody for like feeling optimistic or maybe a little pessimistic about the roster, because whatever. I mean, you could kind of argue it both ways, and there's kind of reasons to pick out for both. So I say let's just move past that and be interested in our program again and enthusiastic about it and excited for a new direction. And that's how you fan.
I think one. Well,
Hey, little
one
boy in the
thing I
corner,
wanna
what do
say,
you
like-
what do you have to say?
yeah, seriously, I was just noting this is like first grade all over again. I've been put in the corner and like told to think about what I've
Where
done.
you belong.
You can shrink him even more. Hang on.
Keep doing it. There you go. Biggest personality, smallest box here. No, I think Jared, and I know this is what excites you, and I said it in the intro, is that if you look at the roster, there's going to be a lot of movement. I mean, that you're not going to have stagnant basketball because you can't afford to. You don't have a 7-footer with his back to the basket on the post. Like, you're going to have to move and cut and find ways to get open and find ways to score inside the 3-point line. You know you can score outside the 3-point line, at least given the track records. But to score inside, you're going to have to make things happen, and that's going to need movement. And that also means that the post players are going to be involved in that on the perimeter as opposed to just stationary while everybody moves around them. And I know that's something you're very excited about.
As we talk expectations, there was a schedule release, and not schedule release, but at least who we're playing. We know that we have non-conference games against Marquette, Louisville, and Kentucky, which I applaud. I think that is a really good way to get started in the non-conference. There's some things that can be added. And in the Big Ten, opponents at home would be Iowa, Nebraska, Northwestern, Oregon, Penn State, Washington, and Wisconsin. Away, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Ohio State, Rutgers, UCLA, and USC. And then the double plays are Michigan State, Minnesota, and Purdue. And as I mentioned, it's so hard to judge with new coaches and major roster overhauls and transfer portals how to feel about who's supposed to be good and who's not. But are there any takeaways from the non-conference and then who we double up and who we play on the road? Any thoughts as you guys have looked at that? Who wants to start? Little boy in the corner. Let's go with Jared.
We avoid the Kohl Center, so that's good. Always nice when
you could say avoid.
You
could say avoid, or we don't get a chance at the Kohl Center because at some point,
at some point, we got to just win there. Like we just need to take our lumps. Yes, avoid. Yeah, because at some point we got to win there. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see like what the rest of the non-conference schedule, is going to look like. But I think having those 3 games on there is good. Playing Purdue and Michigan State twice, means that the Big Ten schedule is probably going to be kind of difficult. But it's really kind of hard to know how much, and the Big Ten usually is kind of so soft in the middle that some of those things, kind of end up evening out. So I don't really have any other strong takes beyond that. Just happy to not have to go to the Kohl Center.
Minnesota
Ryan,
twice.
any thoughts? Go ahead, Bob.
Just real quick, Minnesota twice is interesting because I think that's a chance to definitely sweep. Of the 3, that's your best chance for a sweep. You're looking at what they've done in the portal versus, let's say, Iowa, and I think home at Iowa is going to be an interesting game too. It's going to get a lot of attention just because you have 2 brand new coaches. Both it basically we'll call it the Drake Bowl, for lack of a better term, where the last 2 coaches at Drake are going up against each other. But Minnesota definitely is one you can pick up too. And I mean, I think that if you can split Purdue and you can split Michigan State, you go above 500 on those, clean up at home and take a few road games. You're looking at a pretty interesting season.
Well, the one thing I can say about the schedule that's good is it's just better than last year. And it's just, they have chances to prove themselves early. And then, of course, you get to the Big Ten season and, it is what it is there. It's always a dogfight. And I just think that it's bold to do those things and to actually, he could have reset things when he came in and he decided instead, no, let's put together something that's going to challenge us and move forward from there. And I think that's the smart thing to do, especially your first year. Because then if you do take early season losses, people are like, well, it's a new program. They're putting things together, whatever. You have that built-in. I mean, he's not going to use it, but you have a bit of a built-in excuse if you lose some of those bigger games. Whereas, this past season, you didn't have that. That team had to win. And so I do think it's smart, and I think it's the way to do things. And I think it's probably going to be the way they do things moving forward. He does not seem like a kind of guy who's going to try and, soft schedule himself into a tournament berth.
I think it's good for a program, too, to challenge itself early because you can overcome losses in big games by getting ready to play in a tough Big Ten. I just think that's important. I think Marquette is going to be in a little bit of a rebuild. I think Shaka Smart does a good job, but they lose some guys. And you just don't know with the transfer portal how good or how bad certain teams are going to be. But you learn if you are competitive in those games and avoid the big blowouts that Indiana's had recently, you can learn from that because the Big Ten's a grind. And the question earlier is, do you finish 6th place and go far in the tournament? Well, there's going to be some good teams that are 7th, 8th, and 9th in the Big Ten. It's just with these mega conferences now and very competitive coaches, it's got to be a top 2 or 3 or bust. And I know people will accuse me of watering down expectations and everything, but there are going to be some good teams that get decent seeds that are 5, 6, 7 in the Big Ten, and maybe get a 5, 6 seed in the tournament if everyone takes care of their non-conference portion. We've seen that with the SEC top-heavy things, and that's what the Big Ten has to shoot for. So you got to play these games in order to get ready for the games, and you can't shy away. And I think I'm very happy with the initial non-conference start.
Well, and the other thing is, Coach, the difference between 4th and 10th in the Big Ten is usually a game or two at this point.
Correct.
So if things break your way, yeah, you could be top 4. And if you have a couple where you lose the game late or something, you could drop down to 10. So I mean, I really don't thank you. I appreciate it. You're just shrinking me even more. But no, I think that's what it is. And so it's really going to depend on the team and how they close games and can they get, pick up a win here or there. And you're in the top quarter of the conference.
It's really a shame that the folks listening on the podcast can't enjoy this. Now that
you know how to do it,
enjoyable sessions.
This is
but
gonna have to
no matter where your expectations are or your level of excitement, the thing to look forward to is probably announcement for a summer trip, a foreign trip of some sort, so these guys can get some practice in and play. I think that is something coming up. We have some really good questions coming up here in our final segment, so make sure you stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Dude, I looked off the soundboard and we got 2 guys disappeared all of a sudden. But thanks again, everyone, for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to be, we'll announce the shows when we can, when we want to join and when there's something to talk about. We're not going on a regular basis until games are played next year, obviously. Tune in to X's and Joe's. Not a shameless plug, but an awesome plug for my friend Coach Moats there at the bottom. We appreciate what they do, so make sure you tune into that. Crimson Cast, a lot of good things on the Back Home Network, doing the work, had a really good show prior to our coming on the air. So make sure that you stay in touch and look at the social media so we announce when we're going to be on, and then we'll come on and talk with you. But let's go to our mailbag. Here we go.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips, Bob Moats, and Jared Morris, and we had some questions sent to us in our mailbag. So all of these questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion on Substack. You can learn more. Go to assemblycall.com. So you mentioned Eamon Brennan's post. Did anyone else get a chance to read it? I didn't have a chance to read it. Again, I think that just was part of our discussion on it's okay to be where you are with the expectations for Indiana. We do encourage you to embrace the change and look forward to things that are different. But even the most exciting in us are somewhat going to be reserved until we see it on the court and see what kind of product is delivered by Coach DeVries and staff. Dave Yoder asks, I would be curious to hear thoughts of the impact of Goody and Leal are granted waivers to return to the team. Given the roster, would they even see playing time? Valerie also asked a question about Leo and Goody. If they're granted waivers, are they automatically back? If so, or is there a chance that they could go somewhere else? Jared, your thoughts on the Leo Goody waiver situation and how they might fit into the roster as we see it now?
Well, I will admit I haven't followed this story all that closely. Just have had some other things going on, so I haven't stayed quite on top of it. But I've heard this, so I've kind of spent some time thinking about, what it would be like if that happened. I think like we've kind of assumed Goody would get the waiver. I think a lot of us, kind of like have penciled him in on the roster thinking, okay, he'll probably be there. And so I think that one seems to make more sense just because you can kind of see where he fits with the other roster pieces. He's another shooter who can be out there. Leal is an interesting one to me. I mean, there's obviously nothing Anthony Leal has done on or off the court that would make you think anything other than having this guy as a part of Indiana basketball is a major positive. And last year, we even saw it on the court consistently. Now, he was doing it for a team that wasn't in the NCAA tournament. And I think, as we've said, if Anthony Leal is playing that many minutes, even if he plays his absolute best in those minutes, something, bad probably happened to your team. But I would say I would question the Leal thing a little bit, only this far. And this is less like a reflection of Anthony himself and more just kind of thinking about transitions and new coaches coming in. What does it mean that Anthony Leal's entire college basketball experience was a little bit of Archie and Mike Woodson? And that's kind of the Indiana basketball that he knows for 5 years. But he would carry this kind of weight as a leader. Luke Goody, on the other hand, played for a winning program for 3 years before having one season at Indiana. And so I think when you have a new coach coming in and a complete overhaul of the program, does it complicate him instilling his full culture if you've got a holdover who was here for 5 years with previous regimes and knows a particular way that things were done? I don't know. And I would think that if Anthony Leal stays as a Hoosier, he would do everything he could to make Darren DeVries work. Just in general, if you remove the names from this, that would be my concern. Now, if the head coach is on board with it, if DeVries has talked to him and thinks it'd be a good fit, then awesome. Then cool. I would just generally have concerns about it for that reason.
Yeah, I think, Jared, I would share your concerns if it was someone other than Anthony Leal. And we know his personality enough to know that he's going to be very coachable and not trying to establish his own or bring some old culture in. I think he's somebody who would find it refreshing to be doing something different, especially given the way DeVries wants to play, which is much more in line with Anthony Leal, with the way he played, in high school. And so I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know what's going to come of Goodies. I mean, I've been talking to people and nobody seems to know how that's going to turn out. I think, there could be a lawsuit involved, and usually with these lawsuits, the NCAA just says, yeah, take it, like go. But they also would be setting a precedent, if they turn down the waiver and then there's a lawsuit, all of this stuff, we don't know. But the fact that it's happening tells you that DeVries is fine with these guys coming back. I mean, and there's no word that they're doing it to transfer. And I think they would say, I'm doing this to go play somewhere else. That would be pretty evident on the surface if that were happening. I think the fact that both of these guys are trying means they are both welcome back. And that's not, the university isn't going to go over Darren DeVries' head and say, you have to take these guys. So he is clearly on board with this. We'll see what happens. I think that, just from a culture standpoint, I think that both would be welcome back. We saw Goody in his 3 games in last year, whatever it was, trying to take control of the team when nobody else would, as a veteran, yelling at guys in the huddle, getting them in the right place. And as we saw the season go on, the team was better when he was on the floor. Regardless of his limitations here or there, the team was better when he was on the floor. The team was in the right place more when he was on the floor. The team was doing the right things more when he was on the floor. And you can say the exact same thing about Anthony Leal. Now, the question is, how do they fit in from a playing standpoint? I think that if you look at this situation, they're probably not going to get a whole lot of playing time, but they might be coming back because they want to go to the NCAA tournament again. They want to compete again. They want to wash that taste out of their mouth from what happened the last 2 seasons for Leal and the last season for Goody. And if that's the case, God bless them. Come in. And here's the thing. Also, it's never bad to have more players who can do things on a basketball court available to you. It makes practices better. It makes your team. It also lets guys not get comfortable in their starting positions, and that has happened far too often at Indiana over the last 8 years. So, if you have rotational pieces that are all competing with each other, competing for time in a positive way, I think that I'm completely covered now. It's great. I think that all of these things are a positive for the program, especially given who these two guys are and what they've shown they are.
Okay, so go ahead, Bob, and then I want to ask Coach a question.
Two things I want to just add to this to this thing. The first one is, I can see Goody being more of a contributor than Leal, just due to his size, his shooting ability. I mean, I'm just imagining a lineup with Wilkerson, DeVries, and Goody on the floor together with Connerway and Bailey, and that's really hard to guard. That's really hard to guard. Not saying anybody else wouldn't be, but you have some real possibilities there. He defends hard, rebounds well. Leal does a lot of the little things too, but I can make a better case for Goody at this point. But Leal makes you better because I think Ryan saying you'll have better practices. You're going to make sure he's going to push those guys to be better. One thing to remember to Anthony Leal, and why I can't fault the kid in the slightest for giving us a shot. We forget this kid lost 2020 when he was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana. This kid did not have the opportunity as the number one team in 4A to compete for an Indiana high school basketball championship, him and Connor Hickman. Okay, if he wants to come back, let him back. I think if you can add that to context just for a brief moment, look at the whole picture. I think that I think there are some definite positives. If Darren DeVries thinks there's positives, I'm not gonna fault the guy just yet at all for making that decision.
Yeah, and that's kind of table stakes for the decision. I mean, obviously DeVries would have to be on board with them coming back. Coach, I'm just curious about it from your standpoint, and maybe even, remove some of the individual names from this, but just like if you were taking over a program, right? And maybe the previous administration had, been a little controversial like this one was, and then you're kind of just ready to move on and move forward. Would you want to have, kind of holdovers that, kind of came up in that system, or would you want a fresh start, or would it just depend on the guy?
I think it's a little bit of combination. I think it depends on the guy. If you have high quality guys, that makes the decision a little bit easier as a depth piece or as a culture piece. That makes it easier. It's the same with staff. But the thing that's interesting, guys, is this has been a complete overhaul. No coaches. There's a question by Kevin Booker about curious about Kelbert Cheney's status. Jordan Hulls is back in the training business. We haven't heard if those guys are going to be a part of it or not. We've heard rumors about the names.
I mean,
of other people joining, right? But
I've heard it's a complete
they have
reset.
not been a part of it. Yeah, it's a complete reset.
Reset.
And so if it's a complete reset in all of those other areas, I would not be surprised to see those guys, if they get a waiver, to move on. But I think Luke is probably in a better situation, spending his years at Illinois, only 1 year at Indiana. And as Coach Moach said, he can come in and play that Tucker DeVries role at the 4, 6, 7, shooter type thing. And not to take anything away from Anthony Leal. Anthony Leal was a very good player for Indiana last year. He had to, in order for Indiana to have a chance to make the tournament. When he finally got his chance, he did well. But I think the competition now is a little bit different than what was there last year as far as contributing. But if you have a guy that can really be good in practice and really bring that experience, the key thing is you got to communicate your expectations up front. If the expectation is we played last year and we want to come back and now we're not playing, then even good guys can be divisive in that situation. If you are not upfront and honest on what your expectations are, they're either going to play and here's the minutes, or here's the role, or you're not going to play, but we'd love to have you back, and then make sure that is well understood before you move on, because it is a unique situation.
Let me ask you about these two guys. I'd like to get everybody's opinion on this. I would say DeVries' offense feels like a better fit for Luke Goody, to unlock things in Luke Goody that we didn't see last season. I would argue, I think Leal's value would be much more seen in Woodson's offense and kind of on that roster than what we would see this season. And what I mean by that is, Leal's impact was really magnified by the fact that he did a lot of the little things. Now hopefully we have more of a roster full of guys who do the little things, and so that stands out more. Leal's entry passes and some of the ways that he was kind of a ball mover on offense, but not
Hustle
necessarily the guy
plays,
who
too.
Yeah, and not that those things won't always be at a premium, but I just think even his offensive skills, just as kind of a more of a standstill type shooter, good entry. Like I feel like he was probably a better fit for what Mike Woodson was trying to do offensively than DeVries. But you guys know this stuff better than me, so I'm curious if you buy that hypothesis.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think he stood out last year because of the things that he could do well, and there was lack of those things by the players that were brought in, and he was much needed. You would figure or hope that level is not as needed now because the other players already have that. I do think that Leal was a better fit last year than he would be on this roster. Goody would have more of an opportunity to play in this roster. I think that is a good observation.
That's true.
Well, to clarify, let me clarify real quick. It's not that he wouldn't be a good fit on this roster because he'd be around guys that are like him. I think it's that his value
playing time
shine. Yeah, his value would shine better in what we saw last year than I think what would happen this year, which then gets to your point, Coach, of, okay, now what are the expectations for playing time? That's the kind of stuff I would worry about. If you're the coach and you're satisfied with that stuff and you can add these two guys as like 11th, 12th men on the roster, you got a pretty deep roster. It's just, you got to make sure that you're on the same page with all that stuff.
I think the question, the trade-off comes down to, would you trade time with Trent? Would you trade Trent Sisley's time for one of those two? That kind of comes into play. That comes into play when you're looking at this. You're looking at the calculus of what we're talking about. I do think the question is, can you get your shot? And if you can't get your shot and you're closed out, can you beat the closeout and get to the lane? And those are kind of the questions I think that DeVries is going to be asking, because once you do that, then you're engaging help side. Once you engage help side, you're freeing up other players. It's not going to, and you are going to do a lot out of it. I mean, I do see him doing some very interesting things out of some actions and some sets, but at the same time, it's going to be a matter of the expectation is going to be if you're on the floor, you're not only going to be able to defend, but you're also going to be able to score, and that's going to be the litmus test. And I don't think he's going to worry about hurting feelings, honestly, coming forward. He has a job to do. The guys that he brought in know they have a job to do. So I think it comes down to, I think Coach is right about expectations. If the expectations are, we want you here to be a culture piece, good, but if it's, it just is, you got to play.
I don't feel like DeVries will be somebody who will have a problem being straight with guys on their playing time and things like that. That is not his reputation. Nope. And so I think that you saw some guys transfer out whom a lot of people thought might stick around. And I would imagine some very difficult conversations were had, and they were had in a very straightforward manner. And I think that, again, he's had those conversations with Leal and Goody. Like, those conversations have happened. There's no way that it hasn't. And I think that everything I've heard, certainly about Goody, the Leal development is more recent, but everything I've heard about the Goody stuff is they are holding a roster spot for him. They would love to have him back. If they don't, they move forward. They're not looking to fill that spot. That's his spot, whether or not it happens. And I haven't heard about Leal, but this late in the process, Leal knows how he feels. And so, we'll see.
With the state of the NCAA, it doesn't hurt to put your name in for a waiver with JUCO getting things, and the transfer portal's loaded with people who have run out of eligibility. Put your name in and seek a waiver and see what happens. If you don't, you're missing an opportunity. So it could be pieces of that too that we haven't heard across the nation yet how they're handling that. But there's tons of people that are out of eligibility that have joined in the transfer portal and asking and being ready in case there is a change in the eligibility rules that they can jump in. And Gene Ward had a good question too that went to that, about the turnover. She says, is 100% roster turnover typical for new coaches? And it seems atypical to me. Gene, you're like all of us veterans that have watched the game. It is weird with the transfer portal, but I do think it's more likely now you'll see higher numbers of transfer, even in year 3 or 4 of a coaching regime, if they choose to go and do that. I think the days of high school recruiting and keeping kids 2 or 3 years is probably in the past. And the players who left, it's not because they didn't like DeVries or he didn't like them. It's probably a system fit. and more likely the coach saying you fit in our system, you're our type of player, or you may need to enter the portal and move on. I think there was some honest discussions had, and as we've talked about Leo and Goody with culture pieces and how they fit and what role they've had, those conversations, Gene, were had with the players when they decided to enter the transfer portal. I forget, maybe who was it? Cups was out before the coach was hired, so he had made up his mind without a conversation. But it's not a negative on anything of the new coaching staff or whatever. It's just they've made a decision of what kind of player they want, and they've moved on. So good question there. And then last question,
hey
fellas.
Coach.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add just to the previous conversation about Leal and Goody, kind of one last point, which would be an argument in favor of why you would want guys like that. Back to the conversation about, we're bringing a lot of mid-major guys up, hoping that it can translate. Well, those are two guys that have performed certainly well at, for themselves and their talent level at this level. And so it does give you a little bit of an assurance if one of those guys that you're hoping steps up can't quite hang at this level, you've got a little bit of backup there with guys who are at least proven producers. So that would just kind of be another feather in the cap on the side of being in favor of it.
So our friend David Underwood, he asked, assuming DeVries has finished building the team, is there another team in the NIL era that we compare to with this kind of roster with a lot of mid-major kids? David, I will apologize. I don't know the other schools. I mean, whether they've gotten European kids or not, you know that, Michigan brought in a lot of guys, Illinois brought in a lot of guys. But to say this team mirrors this, I mentioned you would love to have a Louisville type turnaround where Louisville was bad and then got into the 5, 6, 7 seed range in the NCAA tournament. They benefited from the ACC being down, as I mentioned earlier. So, David, I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I do think you'll see a lot of teams in similar situations, maybe the last year or two or going forward. You will see a lot of teams with the majority of these top mid-major guys. And if it works, you can see that being copied throughout NCAA basketball.
Yeah. One thing about this that's interesting, I think, and what you are going to get and what you have been getting is guys who go to new places and kind of maybe not a full reset like this, but pretty much a full reset. But the thing is, they bring a lot of their own players usually from their previous stop, and DeVries hasn't done that. He brought his son, and Enright, I guess you could kind of say was one of his guys because he was at Drake and then went to DePaul. But that hasn't been, he hasn't imported his own guys. He's kind of built a new roster. That I think is a little bit different than what we've seen. And it's not a good or bad thing. Maybe the guys he had at West Virginia weren't what he wanted. Or those guys didn't like the system, whatever it is. But I think that's a different
You hope
thing,
with the
but
money that he went out and got really good
better guys.
players and didn't have to just bring guys that knew the system.
That's
hey, we got some cash here at Indiana. You're pretty
Let's
good
go
at
get a
Sam
higher
Houston
caliber
State.
player. Yeah.
Okay,
I have a question.
You got to hope.
I know we're answering listener questions, but it's on this roster stuff. Is there a player that you guys are most excited to see, not including Tucker DeVries, because we all know he plays a great brand of basketball, but who are the guys that you're excited to see on the floor so far? Just pick one. I mean,
Lamar Wilkerson.
Yeah, I expected that from you.
You're a good man, but I'll
the obvious choice. Who's
because outside shooter, what we haven't had, he was probably the highest rated guy. No, I know Jared Morris enough to know that was going to be your answer.
Connerway. I mean, Wilkerson definitely is one, but Connerway's another one. I'm just interested to see that head of the snake, and also a guy that can get to the lane, who's going to get a lot of single coverage and 2-man game, and he'll be able to get to the lane and really.
I'm ready for his
defense.
I'm ready for his defense, man. I am ready. He's probably going to be the best defensive player Indiana's had since what? Victor? I mean, it's been a long time.
Maybe X's first year. He was pretty good defensively.
Yeah, that's fair.
First year.
What about you, Coach?
Give me the two-headed point guard snake, defensive craziness, diving on the floor, assembly hall, floor burns, Connerway and Enright both. I'm looking forward to just seeing. I know we're not supposed to cuss on this show, but the elves, the annoying little F word, we got two of them. We got two of them. We got two annoying little guys out there, not little, but point guard little, that are just going to annoy the piss out of people. And man, I'm obviously you like Lamar Wilkerson. I can't wait to see Tucker DeVries shoot from 35 feet and have it splash in. And I'm on the spectrum of being excited. And I'm kind of tired of not being excited. So maybe I've kind of swung the pendulum way too far and will be let down again. But I don't have many years left in this world, so I'm going to be excited. I'm going to force my excitement right now. But give me those two absolute ball pressure, get in your jock strap, make people miserable at the point guard. Who needs a rim protector because you can't even get to the damn rim because we're just shutting your ass down from the point guard.
All right.
That's what I'm
changing my vote.
Nasty. Just be nasty. I like it.
Be
Love
real
defense.
excited for this team. Connor Way was the one I was thinking of, but also a guy, I think Reed Bailey for his passing ability, for a big man.
Yeah, that's two.
He's been very highly rated for his passing. I think that'll be fun to watch. I don't know about the rest of his game, how it translates to the Big Ten, all that, but passing translates on every level. And the other one is I'm interested. I think Sam Alexis is a wild card because he was injured this year. But he was part of a championship culture. He's got that size. He's the biggest post player we have, and I don't mean by height. He's 240, and he has a very high block shot rate. It's just going to be interesting to see how he fits in all of that, and if he's healthy, what can he do at the P5 level? What can he do in that position? But I think he's kind of a wild card for me, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. Yeah, good answers all. Coach,
good question.
A+.
Yeah.
You're ready to host.
No, God, sure. I can't do what you guys do. Come on.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode.
Can't host from the corner.
Of Assembly Call. No more questions. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday nights for whenever we do the live broadcast of our Assembly Call recording. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing our music. Thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for our logos. Thank you for Eddie. Eddie wasn't here tonight, but usually we thank him for producing. And thank you for listening. Until then.
Take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go.
Hey, the show's over. Here I come, Coach Tonsoni.
Nobody puts Ryan Phillips in a corner.
Apparently Jared does.
Nobody.
So that's false.
We can
I just kind of like it
around too.
I like it over here.
Just stick you up there at the top.
Now, I don't know what I pushed, but it just went
okay. There you go.
tight all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was in the first segment. If you watch it back, Jared, we went from that to
Okay.
That is
perfect.
I look like I'm at the top of the org chart. Like it's
oh jeez. I gotta get him back
That
down.
is perfect. Hey Dale, are you going to be at the baseball game Friday night or Saturday? Dale Ficklin in the chat. I'll be there behind third base. Maybe.
How are they this year?
Dale.
I'm paying attention.
They've struggled. They're above 500, 5 or 6 games above 500. Their pitching hasn't been very good. They can sure hit the heck out of the baseball, but they're going to have to win the Big Ten to get to the tournament this year.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, thanks for handling things.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Fun time.
Good
Thanks
show.
for the invite.
Good luck with the pup, buddy.
So, Jared, I'm gonna tell you, when we got Duke, Beth was just finishing her first trimester of being pregnant.
Oh, really?
I was almost buried in the backyard. I didn't realize that a nipping puppy at a pregnant woman's ankles was a bad thing.
Oh, geez.
I mean, that was pretty brilliant on my part. Now, granted, the kid and the dog are great together. The plan came together. It was just, I almost died.
Just 7 months of hell.
7 months of hell. Yeah,
I'm sure one of these days we're going to look back on it and be, very
you'll love
grateful.
You'll love the fact your kids get to grow up with a dog, and as long as you're not buried in the backyard because you chose to get the dog,
How long has it been since you've had one, Jared? Since Rebel?
Let's see. Rebel died right after I got home, actually, from one of our trips. It was in March. That was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a couple years.
Yeah, because Birdie was 2, I think, or 3. Yeah, about 5 years ago. Yep, it was time. Excited to have a dog. Dogs are great. Dogs. I mean, I'm loving every minute of it. It's just I've kind of forgot how much attention that a puppy needs, and it kind of fills like every other little gap in your day.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Fun show. Hi, everybody.
And with that, we are done.
This is more like
we are leaving you with this beautiful face.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody. I'm logging off. Good night.
Good night.